Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Bengus Khan, and today we are finally getting into my top 10 favorite audiobook narrators of all time. So we are getting to some of my true favorites who have taken me on some of my most impactful epic journeys with audiobooks. I think some of these you might be familiar with, some of the most prominent voices in the modern genre, but others may be new to you and might spark your interest in trying out this series. But either way, these are my personal favorites, and I know the taste in narrator is something that is so subjective and personal, so totally understandable if you don't vibe with some of these narrators. But I do, and this first one was the one that really got this whole ball rolling for me in listening to fantasy and sci-fi audios. Just the first one that I just got completely lost in and just addicted to and binged it all through audio. And so I'll start with my number 10, which is Mark Bramhall. So this is a narrator who's mainly done just kind of random literary fiction. Hasn't done too many audiobooks. He's kind of this grizzled, older Hollywood actor, does a lot of TV. And I've listened to him for 50 hours. So that's just for the entire Magician's Trilogy by Lev Grossman. And I don't know how many other things I'll do with Mark Bramhall. Maybe some Jeff Shara historical fiction. He's done a lot of nonfiction history, so I might try one of those out if it looks like it's interesting at one point. But I'll probably just do a re-listen of the Magician's Trilogy at some point to re-experience this audio performance, because it was so interesting and nuanced. And a lot of the enjoyment of an audiobook does come down to the author of the books and the storytelling and, not the actual narrator. But when there's a perfect marriage of the voice and narrator to that story, it's just perfection. And we had that here with the Magician's Trilogy. It's a really, now that I've read a lot in modern fantasy, it really sticks out as something unique. It's almost read more like a lot of literary fiction I've read, where it's mostly about the internal lives of a couple main POV characters, and I've seen a lot of people not connect too much with the main protagonist, Quentin, but I think through audio it was just so easy for me to connect to him and to empathize. I think Bramhall delivers a very nuanced and intelligent performance where he fully understands what Grossman's doing with a lot of really deep and heavy emotional character work. And Bramhall has a non-traditional kind of voice actor voice. It's a little nasally, and it doesn't have that deep resonance that some of the others on this list will have. And so it's interesting, and he just is an absolute chameleon with different voices, just sounding so different. Just brings so much nuance to this performance. And I just was entranced by it. I was staying up late, sleeping on the bed next to my wife, but having my phone next to me, playing on basically almost close to silent volume, but putting it right next to my ear, and just staying up late into the night, instead of sleeping, just listening to this series over the course of a couple of weeks. I don't know why I just didn't use headphones, but this method worked to kind of covertly make my way through these audiobooks late into the nights. Bramhall is just such a cool narrator, just really brought this whole cast to life for me. So I will give you a sample from actually the start of book 2. It's tough to find a sample that wouldn't give spoilers away, and I think the start of book 2 is a situation where you won't know who this involves. It's just an interesting little scene here. So here it is from Magician's Land.
The cashier shut the gray door behind them, cutting off the last of the noise from the outside world, and snuffed out the portal. He'd brought the bird cage with him. Now he placed it on top of a cardboard box and opened it to let the crow out. It looked around, shaking first one foot, then the other, the way birds do. "Thank you all for coming," it said. "I will be brief." That was unexpected. Judging from the ripple of surprise that ran through the room, he wasn't the only one. You didn't see a lot of talking birds on Earth. "I'm looking for an object," the bird said. "I will need help taking it from its present owners." The bird's glossy feathers shone darkly in the glow of the hanging lights. Its voice echoed in the half-empty stockroom. It was a soft, mild-mannered voice, not hoarse at all like you'd expect from a crow. It sounded incongruously human. However it was producing speech, it had nothing to do with its actual vocal apparatus. But that was magic for you.
At number 9 is Michael Kramer. So, one of the most prominent voices in fantasy, and I've listened to Kramer for 428 total hours through the entire Mistborn series, Era 1 and Era 2, and I did a whole audio reread of those, so yeah, fully through audio at one point. And then Stormlight Archive, so I did an audio reread of books 1 through 3 of Stormlight, and then Hybrid with Rhythm of War when that came out. And then the entire Wheel of Time series. So I didn't do that fully by audio, a little hybrid, some book reading here and there, immersively. But yeah, a lot of that series I did. And he shares all those big epic series, Stormlight and Wheel of Time, with Kate Redding, who also made an appearance on my list in the last video. And then more recently, I did the first 3 of the Sanderson Secret Projects this year. And he was the main narrator for the first 2 books and then co-narrator for Yumi. So I think have a lot more hours of Kramer ahead of me because he's done the Lycanius trilogy by James Islington. Definitely want to listen to all of that. And the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. So 2 of my highest priority series are also by him. So yeah, and with future Cosmere rereads probably also happening, I imagine Kramer could be the first one to reach 1,000 hours of audiobook time for me. So I know Kramer is not everyone's favorite, and because he's done some of those popular things, I think that's natural, that he just won't click with a lot of people, because he is not one of those who does the most extreme, varied intonation as he's in his default narration. He doesn't do the most distinctive character voices either, so I can very much understand why people might complain that he's a bit monotone, or that just he could, put people to sleep. Well, like, that's very understandable. But for me, his very just deep, rich, resonant baritone has always been a comfort. Kramer's always been extremely immersive for me in these long, drawn-out epic fantasy series. He's just gotten, out of the way a bit, let the story just shine, and never bored me across these hundreds of hours, many thousands of pages. And yes, while he's not the most lively or vibrant performer, he does a lot of varied intonation on a nuanced level. So I don't think he delivers monotone performances. It's just that the variance is not as prominent as a lot of other performers. And so it might seem like more monotone, but for me, it's never monotone. He varies his cadence, he varies his pitch just enough, I think, to keep me really engaged. And when it comes to really climactic emotional moments, of which there are many in the Sanderson and Jordan series, I think he really delivers on that emotion and just some nuance there with the characters that I've always really connected to. So yeah, Kramer, luckily for me, I've always enjoyed, since I probably would have endured those audios either way. But yes, he is a comfort listen, and I just can't wait to get into these other series by him. The sample is going to be from Chapter 1 of Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And this is just some default narration, no dialogue, but I think it gives an example of how he does a lot of nuanced variance in intonation. So could key in on that as we listen to the start of Yumi.
The star was particularly bright when the Nightmare Painter started his rounds. The star, singular. No, not a sun, just one star. A bullet hole in the midnight sky, bleeding pale light. The Nightmare Painter lingered outside his apartment building, locking his eyes on the star. He'd always found it strange, that sentry in the sky. Still, he was fond of it. Many nights it was his sole companion, unless you counted the nightmares. After losing his staring match, the Nightmare Painter strolled along the street, which was silent save for the hum of the Heon lines. Ever present, those soared through the air, twin bands of pure energy, thick as a person's wrist, about 20 feet up. Imagine them like very large versions of the filaments in the center of a light bulb, motionless, glowing, unsupported. One line was an indecisive blue-green. You might have called it aqua, or perhaps teal, but if so, it was an electric variety. Turquoise's pale cousin, who stayed in listening to music and never got enough sun.
At number 8 is Ben Allen. So this is a narrator I've listened to for about 130 hours over the whole course of the 10-book Shadows of the Apt series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So if the last two narrators were part of kind of the older guard of audiobook narrators that have been around for a while, these next three are some young guns that I hope are going to have long, storied careers in this business. Because Ben Allen is definitely a newer narrator and just blew me away throughout this series and was just so engaging. It made it hard for me to pick up Shadows of the Apt in print. Either I was doing it by audio or immersively a lot of the time just because I didn't want to miss out on the performance. And so far, I don't think he's really done much else. But actually, the publisher for Shadows of the Apt didn't put out audiobooks as the series released. I think it started around 2008 and then released over the next few years. And then just more recently, these audiobooks got recorded and put out just a couple years ago. And that's when I read through and listened to the series. And so they're really high quality recordings. And he did them over I think just straight, really just recording book 1 through book 10. And so I think he just really found a groove, and the voices are all consistent for lots of different characters that show up in earlier books or come back later, or just take a book break from being on the page. But just so consistent and really just delivers solid narration, whether it's the default kind of narration or the voices. He goes really far, kind of the opposite of the Michael Kramer approach, to distinguish the different character voices, giving... there are lots of different Kindin kind of races in Shadows of the Apt, and he gives kind of different accents to the different races, just really makes it more immersive for me that way. He's a British narrator, but he gives the Spider Kindin humans kind of American accents, and he's just really good at doing those and all different kinds of accents. But yeah, he's one of these more vibrant performers, and I'm going to give you a sample from book 1, Empire in Black and Gold, where a character is speaking to the spirits of this forest, and they do a really cool audio effect, and this effect comes up a few times throughout the series, but I just loved it so much I wanted to share that. Also, I have no clue why my Bluetooth speaker just really stumbles on delivering some of these samples, especially at the start of new phrases. I've never figured out why it's doing that, but so if you hear it cutting out repeatedly, just know that that's not what the recording is like. That's a speaker issue.
Give me your power, he told the trees. Loan me your power this night. He reached forth to take it. The Dyrrachion answered him back. Who asks? A voice that was like a dry chorus of 100 voices. He could not tell whether it came from the trees themselves or from between them, but the sound of it froze him. A voice like dry leaves and the dead husks of things, and the passage of 500 years. Who would draw upon what we have hoarded? Gusted the voice of the Dyrrachion, and a chaos could barely speak. His breath plumed in the air as the temperature plummeted instantly away. His great pride, that a moment ago had seemed to hold the world in its palm, had withered within him, like leaves when the winter comes. I am a chaos, a seer of the ancient paths of... he stuttered out. You are no more than a neophyte. What could persuade us to lend you our strength? He fought in vain to summon an answer, and then they said, what could save you from us?
At number 7 is Ray Porter. I know he's becoming a real fan favorite in the sci-fi community right now, because I've listened to him for a couple real great ones. That's Project Hail Mary, just one of my favorite single audiobooks of all time. and the Bobverse books, the 4 that are out, and I think a new one might be on the way soon, and for a total of 60 hours. So Porter has also done the Runelord series, so an epic fantasy by David Farland. Those are free on Audible if you have Audible Plus, I think. So definitely want to give those a try. And lots of thrillers and some more like niche sci-fi that didn't seem too appealing to me. But I just look forward to continuing to get more Bobverse books narrated by him, because he is so perfect for this certain kind of POV character, where I think is why so many people just love that Project Hail Mary audiobook, because for the POV character for the Bobverse books and for Project Hail Mary, it's like this nerdy engineer scientist type of character who's sardonic, makes some jokes, but is also very intelligent and capable at the same time. And Porter is just the perfect voice and intelligence for delivering this type of character and narration. And man, when Project Hail Mary gets a little emotional, he really delivers on those emotional moments as well. I will be very curious to see what he's like in more traditional epic fantasy with the Runelords, because I definitely have him kind of typecast, because he's just so perfect for the roles I've heard him in. Like Mark Bramhall, he kind of has a bit more of a nasally voice, and I find that it gives it a lot of character and distinctiveness, and it's fun to listen to different types of narrators with very different voices. So it's, it's a bit higher than the Michael Kramers of the world, and that's okay, that's great. And it's just, has a lot of character to it, and he puts a lot of effort into distinct voices. In the sample I will play from the Bobverse book 1, we have POV from one of the Bob replicants, and he had set up a kind of AI virtual assistant in the form of Admiral Akbar, I think it was, from Star Wars. And so you might hear a voice that's trying to, basically impersonate that Star Wars character. But there's a lot of fun little notes that he puts in throughout these books like that. So if you've loved the Project Hail Mary audio, definitely try out the Bobverse for some recent hard sci-fi that's very accessible, I think written in the same kind of mold.
Snapped back to full consciousness. Backup process, as always, felt like the closest thing to sleep that I had experienced since being reborn in the 22nd century. I activated my VR out of habit before getting on with the day's business. But instead of my rich, detailed library, I found myself in a blue room with no window and a hard, indeterminate floor. Uh-oh. I queried my serial number. HIC 16537-1. Hilton Epsilon Eridani. The Hipparchus catalog number made that clear. I'm a copy of a copy. Crap. Felt like New Handletown all over again. Once again, I was waking up to find I wasn't who I thought. Tried to console myself by noting that I was still a replicant, just a different one. It didn't help as much as it should have. Well, there was no point in sitting around getting all bent out of shape. Copy? Copy ready. Page Bob 1, please. Expected this conversation to be a little surreal. Bob 1 online.
And at number 6, we have Prentice Oniyemi. So I've listened to Oniyemi for 32 hours, for the entirety of the Burning books that are out by Evan Winters. So it's Rage of Dragons and Fires of Vengeance. So Oniyemi is a younger actor, I think trying to do a lot of theater, and has only done a few audiobooks. I'm so lucky that he was the one picked for Rage of Dragons, because he is one of the most electrifying performers I've ever heard. And if I had listened to him for more, or maybe throughout, if all the 4 books of the series were out, he might be higher, but I wouldn't mind maybe moving him up a few more rungs as I listen to him more. Because he has this rich baritone voice, and then he injects so much emotion and passion, and that is what these books in particular call for. And there's a lot of African-inspired terminology in these books too, that if I'd read it in print, I think I would have had a little bit of a difficult time trying to navigate. but he just delivers it in a way where it's so immersive, and the accents he used just seem really suitable. Yeah, Oniyemi is one of those audiobook narrators that you should try them out just for the performance. Like, if you don't end up loving the story, but if you want to go on an absolutely tremendous audiobook ride, do these two books. I happen to think they're very high quality, and that Winter improved his writing with Fires of Vengeance and took the story in a really interesting direction. Just character work kind of getting deeper as the narrative kind of slows down and takes some breaths. So I'm really into this series. Can't wait for him to come out with book 3, and can't wait to re-listen to books 1 and 2 in preparation for that whenever it comes. Besides the Burning series, Oniyemi has done some literary fiction, a couple prominent recent novels, but this might be the only thing that I listen to him for, with right in my wheelhouse of modern epic fantasy. So often the audiobook sample on Audible, which usually comes from the very beginning of a book, is not the greatest sample, but this I want to avoid spoilers, but also I think the beginning of this is a really strong and gives you a great sense of Oniyemi's performance chops and what he's doing throughout these books. So if you want passion and fire and electricity, go to these audiobooks for the Burning series, and Oniyemi, I guarantee you, will knock your socks off.
The moment had arrived. She wished she had the courage to face him for it. The gifted, the ones with the forward scouts, sent word. They found the rage. Teifa pointed to the horizon, past the slaughter, steeling herself. And nested in the central mountains, the ones dividing the peninsula, and one of the dragons has just given birth. Is a youngling, and I will form a coterie. No, he said, not this, Teifa. She could hear his desperation. She would not let it sway her. These savages. How can we make peace if we do this to them? Siori said. But the argument wasn't enough to change her mind, and he must have sensed that. We were only to follow them, he said. If we use the dragons, we'll destroy this land. If we use the dragons, the call will find us. That sent a chill through her. Teifa was desperate to forget what they'd run from, and aware that, could she live 1,000 cycles, she never could. Can you hold this land for me, my champion? She asked, hating herself for making this seem his fault, his shortcoming. I cannot. Then, she said, turning to him, the dragons will.
Oh man, I was just getting so sucked back in to this story, and maybe I will give a re-listen to this soon, because oh my god, I love it so much. Maybe I should put Oniyemi higher on this list, because his pure audio performance, just separate from the actual stories and texts that they're performing, I think is of the highest possible quality. He's amazing at giving a kind of understated, reserved emotion with just holding back a little bit. His pauses, the silences are so great. Oh my god, just so immersive. So if you want a gripping audio experience, go for Rage of Dragons and Fires of Vengeance. You will not be disappointed. Alright, that was my number 10 through 6 favorite narrators. I will hopefully come to you soon with my top 5. And with so many already so strong in this video, it was just hard to rank them. And yeah, I just love so many audio performers. There's so many great ones, and I'm just so thankful for all of the hours that I've gotten to spend hearing their awesome performances. So tune in next time for the last bit of this list, and let me know in the comments if you've also loved any of these narrators, or excited to try some, or have any disagreements. I expect there to be some. And yeah, I'll catch you later.